Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Riffhard podcast. My guest today is Greg Burgess, guitar player for Allegaeon and Nuclear Power Trio, and he is awesome. Let's get into it. All right, Greg Burgess, welcome to the Riffhard podcast.
Thanks so much, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And I was thinking about this. I feel like we have some parallels, and I discovered this talking on the phone with you the other day and also looking at the Wikipedia, but we both have bands that have had 1 million members where me and you are the common thread.
The common thread, yeah.
The common thread. And I feel like it's an interesting thing to keep a band going that way and still have it be the band. Right?
Yeah.
Like not be a completely different band. And even though obviously when new people come in, you get new writing partners, you take on their style, there will be differences, but making sure that it still sounds like the band that it always was, I think is something that that comes up a lot when I read people's opinions online or whatever. Is that's a question people ask, is if there's new people, isn't it just a new band? I don't think so, but what are your thoughts?
I think it can be. I think it depends on how your band's structured, right? Because like if depending on how much of a dictatorship the band runs at, I think it can very much be that. I mean, if we look at Annihilator, like for instance, Jeff Waters has run that ship. It sounds like Annihilator from, Alice in Hell all the way to where he is today. Like
Megadeth.
It's Megadeth, same thing, right? If you're a little bit more like democratic, things are going to change. And, and I don't think it's kind of weird in my position because I'd like to think that the band is very democratic. So the sound has drastically changed from when we first started to where we are now. And like it gets subjective on whether people enjoy that or don't enjoy that. But that also, I don't think there's anything wrong with listening to new people as they come in. But it does have to, you do have to remember where you come from, why people are joining your band in the first place, which when people lose sight of that, then, more turnover happens, I guess.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing, right? Because if someone is joining your band and you really respect them as a writer, then why would you not want
Absolutely,
at least part of what they bring to the table? But then the question is, is what they bring to the table, I guess, compatible with the vision, or is the vision now different?
Yeah, and I think being on the same page creatively is a very challenging thing when you have like so many different pieces to the puzzle that aren't steeped in the history of how you got to where you are. And that can be a challenge, I think, for anybody, but one that has to be tackled.
Yeah,
I'm totally losing my train of thought here. I'm just talking.
No, I just think it's an interesting topic, man, because it's something where I think about the democratic versus benign dictatorship setup, the differences between them a lot, because I know that I try to be democratic to a point, but I also know that there have been times where I went too far with that and the music suffered. To where I was like, the way I see it is my instinct is what got the band noticed and got fans and got things going. It was my musical instinct. So it's not that I think I'm always right, but I know that my instincts for what this should be are correct. And so to make it democratic so democratic that I start to question my own instincts, that has never yielded good results. That's always yielded the stuff that fans like the least, and that
Yeah.
to this day I like the least. So I feel like, at least for me, that's the line, is this input making me go against my instinct, or is it just like a better version or do my instincts like it better than what I came up with? Like that's what
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gut check, I guess.
Yeah.
Before we get back to this episode, I want to take a minute to talk about Riffhard, riffhard.com, not the Riffhard podcast, because this podcast is actually tied to our online school, Riffhard. And if you're new here, it's the world's best online school for modern metal guitarists. You know, we've got hundreds of lessons from guitar players such as Javier Reyes, Jason Richardson, Wes Hawk, Dan Sugarman, Miles Dimitri Baker. Man, I could just keep on going on. Aaron Marshall from Intervals, Mike Stringer of Spirit Box. I'm reading now because I don't want to leave anybody off. Dean Lamb of Arcspire. It just goes on and on. It's like all the best of the best. And you get tons more than just lessons with them. You get instant access when you join, but there's also all kinds of challenges. Like once a month, we do something like 10-day down picking challenge, or a 10-day tremolo picking challenge, or a 10-day alternate picking challenge, where we really guide you through the lessons and make sure that everybody is getting better. We're not just giving you these videos and sending you out into the wilderness to fend for yourself. We are right there with you. We also do 6 songwriting challenges. Like we have a monthly one called King of the Riff, where we give you a brief, like write a Spartan war anthem or write a technical death metal song with like some criteria. And there's prizes that include guitars and cables and all kinds of cool gear. And we also have private Facebook and Discord communities of like mind and supportive people, no assholes. That's really, really important to include. Now, with Riffhard, you also get a subscription to Nail the Mix. They live under the same site. So with Nail the Mix, you get to learn how to mix metal. You also get access to Buster Otoholm's Beginner's Guide to Recording Metal. So if you're just playing guitar and trying to record yourself, you have a band and you want to make demos for your band members, or you want to make your own demos, but you just can't get them to sound anything but garbage, or you just can't get past the starting gate, it's too complicated, we've got you covered. Buster Otoholm will show you how to do it. And also, if you want to take it further and actually learn how to mix, there's no place better than Nail the Mix over at URM Academy. And that's all included with Riffhard subscription. All right, so if that sounds interesting, you want to check it out, go to riffhard.com. I'll see you there. And let's get back into this episode.
Allegion in of itself is a very democratic process. So when and part of that is that everybody that we bring in, we respect them as a musician.
Yep.
So for better or for worse, I think that the product is never subpar. It may be different, but I think it's still as quality as some of the other things. Whether I like it as much as like some things where, you know, I had more control or so. I mean, that's up for debate or whatever, but I don't think there's ever been a dip in quality when it comes to that. And we can kind of get into the like struggle with that, the creative, like holding on to the reins, but at some point, someone else's, I don't know, like for me, like someone else's creative like vision, whether it completely deviates, you know, there's always going to be some validity in that, because obviously people like what they like, and you know that like music is such a subjective thing, right? So it's a very hard line to walk. You've like come out of the gate with like such a hard question.
I know. That's what I do.
Pulls no punches. Riffhard podcast.
That's what I do.
Yeah,
that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, I don't know if I have like a strong concrete answer, because I guess I don't really know myself where, you know, that line lays, you know.
Well, I think that's honestly, I think that's it right there, is that it's something you had to kind of keep chasing that line,
Yeah.
and evaluate each scenario on its own, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I think the last thing you want to be is someone that just turns down great ideas because you want to hold the reins, or
Yeah.
someone who just accepts all ideas because you want to seem like a good guy. Like,
Yeah.
both of those are kind of disastrous, or could be disastrous.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I feel like I am not adding anything to this. Like you said it very succinctly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll be my own guest. Yeah, I was just curious about how you felt about lineup changes, because you've had several, I've had several, and it's one of those things where when I look at my favorite bands, most of them have also had several, and there's some bands where it makes no difference. I mean, it makes a difference, but it doesn't make a negative difference.
Right.
And then there's some where I'm like, the magic's gone for me.
And it's not what you fell in love with at the first part. When I say there's no answer, I'd be like, because I would feel like we had compromised along our career path, and then I talk to fans, and some of that stuff is like their favorite stuff.
Yeah.
Right. The album that I'm like, oh man, I'm just kind of not embarrassed by it, but I just like wish that we either had more time or our touring schedule wasn't so hectic, so we didn't have to rush. And then, for some people, that's like their favorite album that we ever did. So I don't know. I think it's a really hard thing to judge, is like through the stages of your career. Like I think everybody, when they get into this, they kind of want of course we want that self-fulfilling, like musical, like artistic output. But then I also think there's like part of us that want to be with kind of like our friends and go that. And I think there's kind of a battle within that. And also, there's, a lot of people, I see this a lot. It's like, oh, you have so much turnover, you must be an asshole. Right. And that could be absolutely true, or it could be that no one makes there's not a lot of income out there now. So putting up with, like conflicting attitudes or personalities isn't really worth it in these days, right? There's not, no one's like, you're not having, I don't know a local band that's like having a shouting match like we saw in like some kind of monster that makes it worth it. There's not millions of dollars involved, right? Because why wouldn't, if anybody was going through that at this time, no one would stick around. They would definitely split, I would think.
Yeah. I would think as well. Like the stress to money ratio is not favorable towards stress.
No, it's definitely not.
Yeah. I think too, it's very easy to second guess things, but the reality, the question that I posed at the beginning is kind of like idealistic, but then there's this reality of keeping a band going in the real world, where there's things you have to do to fulfill a contract, or to keep fans engaged with your band. There's just so many decisions you have to make that sometimes you have to make a less than ideal choice in order for the greater good of just keeping things going is concerned.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I think people don't see on the outside. But I think when I go back and I second guess certain things, but then I put myself back in those shoes, it's like, well, why did I bring this person in the band, or why did I not want to work with this person anymore? Or why did we say yes to this thing, or why did we say no to that thing?
Yeah.
If I think back to that time, there was always a reason. Like it wasn't just some random stupid thing. There was always a reason that involved, well, the alternative is worse.
Right. Yeah.
I think.
Oh man, I can think of some tours that we definitely did not want to do, but we were told we should do that we ended up doing, and we're just miserable from the get-go.
And how do you feel about those now?
After, I mean, like, we're knocking on 20 years. I feel like now, if we'll just say no, you know, because when we first started, I think we were, you know, we didn't know how things worked, and I think that's true with a lot of bands. You don't really know how things work, and you finally sign that magical piece of paper that takes you from, oh, this is a professional thing now. Well, we have more power, but like you've just moved up the shit pile a little bit. Like not much has changed, except now you're expected to get in a van and you know, go eat it. But like, so we, like, at the very, very beginning, like the first 2 albums, we basically picked and choose what we wanted to do, and most of the answers were no. And then it became, hey, this is like totally crushing you. Like, people don't, like, agents don't want to work with you because you don't do anything, right? And it was just like, well, it's just a bad financial decision for us, where it's like we had to learn to become a yes band, right? So it's like, eventually you're like, hey, they're a yes band. They'll go out, they'll work. Like, you had to prove yourself that you could go out and work. And then now I feel like, hey, we've proven we're willing to go out and work. We're willing to go live in a van for months at a time. But we've done that. So now we're going to do make the best business decisions for the band. Like, if the money's not right, we're not going, right? We're finally at that point where we can, like, really just go, no, we're not going to do that. And it's taken a long time because we got stuck in the yes man mentality for so many years, too long, and ended up hurting us a little bit, I think. But
how did you know when it was time to abandon the yes man mentality?
I just like, I don't, it just became, when you're looking at the chart of how long you've been doing it, how many albums you have out, and then the dollar signs at the end of the day, or what's coming, right? And it's kind of like what we just talked about, the stress and aggravation versus, you know, keeping things together. But at some point, it's just like, no, it's not worth it, right? But there is that, like, people know that we're willing to go out and work. So I'm not too afraid of people going, oh, you're not available for work. I'm like, we have years saying that's not true. So if you're going to take that attitude, I'll go find someone else to work with, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, there's a parallel with producers.
Yeah.
I think that in order to create a production career, you have to say yes.
Yeah.
You have to say yes to a lot of free work at first, and then say yes to everything.
Yeah.
Until
it's the whole, like, will you work for promotion or?
At first, I mean, look, people, it's really, really negative that you get these multimillionaire boomer producers telling people not to do that, or you see those memes going around of talking down to people who offer work for exposure. There's a difference between something for legitimate exposure or career advancement versus being taken advantage of, and when that narrative goes out there, it blurs the line between the two, and it gives a lot of people this false sense of not having to pay their dues up front, and really, really hampers their development. Like, at first, you really do have to just say yes and agree to do stuff where there's just not really going to be much money involved. But then once you get past that, then you have to learn when to start saying no, or you won't advance, or your schedule will be overbooked, and you'll go crazy.
Yeah. No, that's super. That's a really good way, man. You're great at putting things into concise things. And just like, you have to be the yes guy, and then you have to know when it's time to start saying no and flip the script. And that's
but how? See, it's easy to say that you have to do that. The question is, how do you know when's the time, right?
Yeah.
I think with what you said about in the band scenario makes sense, is over a period of years, is it still worth it or not? And I think also in a band, if you keep getting the same types of offers and you keep saying yes to them, you'll probably keep getting more of the same types of offers.
The same types of offers, yep. Or it's like, I think negotiation needs to come in at that point. It's like, hey, we've toured for 2 years, getting $350 a night. It's time for a bump, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Man, eating it though is tough these days because the price of doing things is way up.
Is just eating is shifted. It's just a higher class of eating it. You're still eating it, but just things cost more, so the pay should reflect that. Yeah,
but does it? That's I don't know what baby bands get offered on tours these days, but I cannot imagine making it work for the kinds of offers we used to get in this day and age. Like, I just don't understand how it would happen.
Right.
It just
like the $150 a day a show.
Yeah, the $150 a day tours.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand how it would like actually be possible
with the cost of gas, food. You can't even like. I remember we did like, hey, here's your per diem, $10 a day. That's like $5 a meal, and then of course dinner should be buyout from the venue. Can't do that anymore. Like a meal's like $11. So.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is like even and people will say merch, but like if you're at the $150 a night range, you might not be selling much merch. So let's just say you're not, and maybe you're selling $50 or $100 a night in merch. Still, in like 2005, you could figure out a way to make that work.
Yeah,
if everyone was willing to rough it enough, like you could make that work.
If you had parents' couches to sleep on when you got home.
Yes. Oh yeah. That's that being key. But or a job.
Yeah.
Or a job.
I guess that's if a job, but like if you're not getting paid from the tour, you just took a month off of work. You'd have to save up for tour. I remember that. Do you remember that? It was like, I got touring going up. I got to save so I can pay my bills while I'm gone.
I was lucky. I had my bills down to like when we first started touring. Like I had very supportive parents, but I didn't live with them. I need to say that, but so I had a studio and I had worked out my bills to like $400 a month. So I would just need to record for like 2 or 3 days and I'd be good for the month. So it was very, very easy to do that in 2004 or 2005, like just record for a week and then I'm good. That's just insane.
It's a different world now.
Yeah. It's a very different world. Like, I don't see how that's possible now.
Yeah.
So
it's not.
No, that's it. It's not. It's crazy. So I feel like the expectation of what it means to go out there and work is probably a little bit different. Like, I don't know this for a fact, but I know that there was a time where you were expected to go out there like that for like 9 months a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I don't feel is the expectation now.
No. I mean, something that I've, kind of the thing we've noticed before is like, you want to go out and work, you want to go tour, but if you don't have new markets to hit, then you're just oversaturating yourself. So your attendance will go down, right? That's like the new thing we're discovering. It's like when we shot out of the cannon right after COVID with everybody, like, man, it was great. You couldn't fail right then because everybody was so hungry. Everybody was going to every show. And then we're just like, all right, cool. We're going to road dog it like we always did. And then it was just like the numbers just started to crush us. And then you'd hit same market 3 times within a year. And I'm just, it came to the realization it is like, if my favorite band came to my city 3 times in a year, I wouldn't go see him. Right. And you just have to think about that where it's like, sometimes you feel lazy if you're not out working, but sometimes
yes,
it's better to stay home. And that's another like hard lesson that, when you're so used to being out all the time.
Especially when you have industry telling you to go do stuff because that's how they make their paychecks. So that was a very tough thing for me to learn, because even back in the day, I was realizing that we keep hitting the same markets over and over, and then sometimes with the same bands. It's not good for the only people benefiting are the people taking a commission.
Yeah, that they get their percentage. Yeah.
Yes, they get their percentage, but it wears the band out. If it messes with our relationships, I see it wearing other bands out who do this, hit the same market 4 times a year thing.
Yeah.
And the pressure to do that, I realized was like, at the time I didn't have as crystal of a view as I do on it now, but I could still kind of tell they're pressuring us really hard to do this. Why? Because logically, it doesn't make sense. Like,
Yeah.
these aren't going to be big shows. We just played here. We're going to play here again in like 8 months. Why do they want us to do this tour? And why are they telling us to turn down this other tour that might be less money, but is a different audience? Something's not kosher here. And only by taking those shitty tours and not listening to your gut do you realize your gut was right. And that when you're being pressured to do stuff like that, you should just be questioning people's motivations and questioning if logic lines up with what you're getting pushed into doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
there's always benefits? That, like, that's it. At the end of the day, is like, will this benefit us? Right. And I think there's a learning curve with that after you've been a yes band for so long.
Yeah. Because does this benefit us can be spun lots of different ways. And you can be convinced, I think, if you don't know what you're doing, you can be convinced that something that won't benefit you will benefit you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You're paying somebody else's phone bill. That's basically.
That's right. It doesn't matter if no one shows up, they're still getting their percentage from,
Yeah. Now, I got to say, we don't work with people like that anymore.
No.
And not everyone we worked with in the past was like that. Either.
Right.
Like, not everybody's a shyster. I just want to make sure that,
that's put that out there. Yes.
You put that out there.
We don't work with anybody like that anymore.
Yeah.
But I think there's also that learning curve too, is learning to not work with those people.
Yeah. Yes. At first, it's hard to avoid, I think.
Yeah.
Have you noticed this?
Predatory.
Dude, have you noticed that sometimes I feel like, I don't know, feel like the music industry takes people who might have been, I don't want to say normal, but like emotionally healthy.
Yeah.
And has turned them into very paranoid, very defensive, very reactionary or reactive types who will start to preemptively do shady things because that's who they've been surrounded by. And they've kind of have learned that you're swimming with sharks and you have to outshark sharks. And have you noticed that does that to people sometimes?
Absolutely. I've seen people do it too. And it's like, it's dog eat dog. So like, I'm like, but that's not like going against their personality. Right. And it's completely defensive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I've seen it. And so I feel like if this requires some self-awareness, but if someone is like wondering, am I working with the right people? Do they have my best interest? Well, ask yourself, are you starting to get needlessly paranoid? Like, do you find yourself, do you find yourself getting strangely defensive? Do you find yourself doom casting a lot of things where you wouldn't have before? If you're kind of starting to notice these changes in how you think, maybe examine who you're surrounding yourself with and why you're starting to, if you weren't already like that.
Yeah. Another one is if you start to to not really enjoy music anymore. I think that's a huge red flag.
Yeah.
And I've definitely gone through those too. And I've just
been there.
I just hate this right now. And it's like, this is one of the coolest things to do. So why would I hate it? And then you go, oh, well, I know a guy that's making me loathe just my instrument in general, which get away from them. You're all good.
Man, on our last tour before the hiatus, it was Fear Factory, UK, and Europe with High on Fire. And it was I remember these were good shows.
Yeah.
I remember playing London and there's 2,500 people. And I was just I hate this. So and we're playing the show and it's just what's wrong with me? This right here is the goal. Here we are. What's going on with my head? Why do I fucking hate
on the
this?
other side of the planet, playing for things that people would kill for? Yes. This many people, and just I'm so miserable. Yeah, exactly. And I think that if you are feeling that way, you really should ask yourself why. But the hate of playing music, that I think that happens to lots of people. How have you gotten out of that? Well, I think one is I'm just trapped, right? I don't my whole my backup plan as a classical musician, is guitar, right? So the goal of being this electric guitar Torigan metal band thing, that was my dream, right? And for all intents and purposes, I've done that, right? So when I get into that, well, it's my backup plan is to go play classical. So sometimes just taking that step back and then switching, going to play the classical, I realize, dude, guitar is awesome. I love playing this thing. The fact you can pick up something that's not alive and create something out of thin air is such a cool, not only experience, but just a way of expression, especially if you suck with words. I'm not... People are gonna know when we listen to this podcast, this Greg guy, man, he cannot I don't word very well.
You don't give yourself enough credit, but but I get what you mean. It goes further than words, though. I think words fall short of where music can go, which is why actually I think that's why when you go to other countries where nobody speaks a word of the language that your lyrics are in, and they can still love it just as much, because it goes past that. Have you heard the Opeth songs that were put out in Swedish, or the the versions of those Demo songs that came out in Norwegian?
No, I don't think so. Was this the Come Vita thing? I don't know. They do an album that was Opeth in English, and then they did a Swedish version? Is this what you've heard?
I believe that's what it is.
Okay.
And then Demo took a few of their songs off of Death Cult and put them out in Norwegian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's way better, because I don't understand a word they're saying. It's just a feel. It's just a feel, and it goes further. I feel like words almost cheapen it. So I don't know. So talking about words versus playing, I think playing is a higher order of expression anyways. But so you saw classical as your fallback plan.
Yeah. I mean, that's where my degree was. That's what, I find it extremely rewarding. And it was always, I'm sure a lot of people can relate with this. Finding a drummer is very challenging. A whole bunch of local bands are we all have the same drummer. It's guys in 8 bands, but that was my when I was a kid, I could never find anybody to play with. Right, I could find other guitar players or a bass player, but I couldn't really find a drummer to save my life. So classical was a way that I didn't need anybody else. That was a very insular thing, and so that's and of course we had Randy Rhoads. And then, back in the 80s, there was always that instrumental acoustic track that everybody put on their albums. And like I think Sepultura had one on schizophrenia. Maybe that's not true. That sticks in my brain for some reason. It's been a while since I listened to schizophrenia, but then like Overkill had one on WFO, and then of course Randy Rhoads. I just remember like those things being drawn to those where it's like I didn't need other people to create these sounds, right? I could have that fulfilling thing without being in a room. Now, being in a room with other guys, generally more fun. I always stress that when people like, which one do you like better? I'm like, I like them both equally, but they're very different. One is it's more fulfilling because I am the band, and one is more fun because you have that musical conversation with people in the room and can like you react to how they're playing, and like a very different than words, as we were saying, that like the playing conversation, you know.
Do you find much of a crossover?
A little bit. Obviously, one hand, the fretting hand, but
yeah, sure. But I mean, classical guitars, is a whole universe unto itself.
Yeah,
that's why I'm curious, like where you obviously a fretboard is a fretboard, right? And so notes are notes, and so there's definitely going to be a technical crossover there, where your hands are stronger and your knowledge of how a fretboard lays out is obviously going to cross over. But beyond those basics, do you find any crossover or two totally different headspaces?
My world's been so intertwined between the two that for me there's not really a separation, right? With like all the classical stuff that I've done within Allegaeon, even putting it on top of, or having it accompany a metal thing, it's just all, to me, they're like relatives that can exist in the same space a little bit. Make it nightmare for Dave Otero.
Oh yeah.
Like, hi, mix this quiet instrument with a full band. He probably hates me every time I show up, but yeah, I don't. For me, there's not a lot of differences. To me, they exist within the same realm.
When you were going to school for classical, how much time were you able to spend on electric?
Not a lot, to be honest.
I figured.
Like it was. Yeah, it was very. It was in the practice room for at least 4 hours a day. I would get up at 4 a.m., go to school, practice for a couple hours before my 8 a.m. class, and then, if I didn't like take a nap somewhere in the day, I'd be practicing, and then, just surviving to go back in the practice room, right? Just because you had recitals coming up, you had all that, and it was like electric was always there. Like I had them, I played them, but it wasn't like classical was such the focus for those like 6 years of school that, me and one of my duet partners, we did have kind of like a progressive, like instrumental, like metal band type thing on the side. But it was very just like, hey, we both kind of do this. Let's just, we can do that. But my real electric skills didn't really like bump up until I auditioned for Allegaeon.
That's what I was curious about was, I see this with creative people. I see it with, I call it the entrepreneur curse, actually. It's very true with entrepreneurs. And it's this idea, I see it with musicians too. So I think there's a lot of similarities, and because I'm both, I definitely see those similarities, because for me, there's no real difference. It's just what I'm being creative about. But you get this idea that there's a million different things you could do, and all of them could work, or most of them could work, and you can make any of them work, and they're all cool. And so you can get overwhelmed with, well, which one do I work on? Or you can also just decide to do too many of them at the same time and half-ass all of them And what I've noticed from people who have been able to pull off getting good at multiple things or have like multiple companies or like multiple careers is there's always a time period where one thing was the main focus and everything else took a back seat. And then that time period ended. And then the next thing became the main focus for a while. And then that time period ended and so on. They didn't try to do all of it at the same time. So you weren't going for your classical guitar degree and also trying to develop your electric skills to the level where you need to in your band.
Yeah, no, not at all. It was like learning, like I was pretty much a prog rock and thrash kid. Like the whole death metal, like technical death metal thing was like, I was thrown into the fire and it was just like, all right, suck it up like a sponge. And then here's what you need to be able to do to play this, get practicing. And then it was just, all right, that was became the new regimen. It just replaced electric with, replaced the classical with the electric and then ran that every day. Like learning how to sweep pick, that was just something that I never had any want to do before I got in this band and that it was needed. So then it was like, all right, better learn it. And then just every day with the metronome hitting it and, cultivating those skills. And then
so did you keep the 4 a.m. thing?
No, not at all. I just switched. I'm much more of a night owl, so I'd stay up later and then, but the 4 a.m. thing was just trying to fit more hours in the day. Because when you're in a little apartment, people don't like you playing at night. Also trying to find like 4 a.m., getting up at 4 a.m., I can guarantee you that those practice rooms were empty. Right?
Yep.
So I never had to fight anybody for practice room. I had a spot I could always find a room. Like later in the day, if I got up at a normal time, probably couldn't find a place to practice with all the other musicians in the school. So
you want extraordinary results, take extraordinary measures, be the psycho, basically.
Yeah, I mean, if you love it, just you dive in.
Yeah, so but same elapsed time basically when it was time to get the tech skills up. Same idea is same idea. But I mean, even now that like I'm busy, I don't have nearly enough time to devote because there's plenty of things I would love to work on. I want to take a vacation just so I can practice. I get that, but still, you had your time period where you developed the skills. So, what was that regimen like?
What
was the list of things? What was the list?
Okay, so you had your technique that was like either a study or like, of course, you do with scalar practice.
No, I mean for the death metal. Like once you were like, okay, now I'm good. I have to get good at this whole new thing. How did you transfer what you learned about how to practice over to the extreme metal?
The metronome was the main thing. That wasn't really talked about. Like now it's such a common thing. It's like everybody, you put a metronome on, you just work. That was never a concept for me when I was like taking guitar lessons. Like we're talking like early 90s. No one had really talked about using a metronome.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. And it's like, wow, it's like such an abomination now. But like, so when I had to use that metronome in classical, I just brought that over to the electric. That was like the biggest thing. And then I started seeing mad results. And I would literally just have speed things where to have times where like, how fast did I get today? And I would just keep a running tally. And then I could go back and check my progress. Because I think a lot of the times when you're in it, you can't really see how far you're advancing. Now we have cell phones. You could film yourself. You could actually like physically see yourself. Back then, cell phones were like a brick, so we didn't really have that. So it was like you'd write down your BPM, right, on your little analog up by 8.
On your analog paper.
Yeah, analog paper and analog metronome. Yeah.
I still track everything. I have a spreadsheet where I track all BPMs still.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. It's because I feel like if I don't, it almost feels like it didn't happen. It's
Yeah,
weird.
right. Yeah.
It's like the practice didn't happen if I didn't track it.
You have that concrete record right there.
Yeah, exactly. It's weird. But okay, so you brought the metronome over. You're absolutely right. That's something that was just not really done in metal. That was something that my guitar teacher, the one that I had back in the early 90s, never brought a metronome into it. I'm the one who eventually figured out that I should be using a metronome. And it was because I was like studying not classical guitar, but I was studying classical music.
Yeah.
And it was like I was learning a lot of violin music on guitar and talking to violinists and cellists and inquiring about their practice routines. And they all used it. So I started doing that on guitar. And what do you know? Like that was when suddenly I started sucking less.
Yeah, it's such a weird concept to think that there was a time when guitar players weren't playing with metronome, but it was so night and day. I didn't even know what a metronome was till I went to college, and it was like, oh yeah, classical guitar, you have to get a metronome. I'm like, what the hell's a metronome? You know, so
it's this thing that makes you feel really bad about yourself at first.
Yeah, the drummer that like is never wrong.
Dude, how about drummers? Do you remember how scared drummers used to be of metronomes? That's it was pretty funny thinking back to they would get very uncomfortable if you brought up recording to one or ask if you play to one or whatever. I remember so many drummers just getting agitated at the thought of that. I mean, it just ruins my feel, man.
Yeah. I always love that excuse.
Yeah.
Oh, there's like the feel. It's ruined my feel. I'm like,
you're shitty. Okay. You're shitty out of time feel. It ruins your inability to not keep time.
Yeah.
Okay, so you brought the metronome in, and what about when it came down to like the daily routine? Like, how much did you spend on just hardcore technique versus learning repertoire versus anything else you might have been working on?
When I switched to electric?
Yeah.
I think there was at least, I had to have an hour of metronome practice on sweeping. And then that was like my one key, because that was like something I was completely unfamiliar with, right? And I didn't have a teacher. It was like I had to figure out everything by myself. So I feel like it took way longer. I think it took me like 8 months to figure out how to do this technique, which is so stupid now, because like just go on YouTube and there's a million explanations of the technique, but like I didn't have that. So it was like that trial and error of an hour of that. Then there was an hour of learning the songs, and then you have an hour practicing, because learning and practicing kind of think they're very different, right? So
yeah, okay, so basically 3 hours a day. 3
hours, yeah, and with breaks.
It's interesting that you say sweep picking was like the non-negotiable, because lots of times I hear people say that like down picking or something is the non-negotiable. If they don't do down picking, it goes immediately. And so they always do that. But I guess if you're starting from absolute zero on a technique, if you don't prioritize it, you're never going to get to a professional level with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was late to the party on the down picking thing too. Yeah, I think it's kind of weird because classical was my whole world. So these concepts like down picking and like the hardcore like James Hetfield thing, that was like, I mean, in the peripheral, but it never was like, oh, you need to do this. There was no one was there telling me you should do this, or I didn't have the wherewithal to hear it and go, oh yeah, this is the way to do it. Or if I did, I'm like, that's a little hard. I made like doing the alternate picking. It's like, right?
It's definitely a little hard.
Oh yeah, but there wasn't there was like, no, well, we have to do it this way, right? There wasn't any of that to reinforce that. Like, oh, okay, I need to practice that. So super late to that. Like now that I'm older, I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta practice the down picking thing to make sure it like cuts. But that I'm like super late to the party on that. My evolution through metal is very weird. It's a weird journey.
I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome because people get this idea, they believe this myth that if you're not like a Jason Richardson,
yeah,
where, you know, he was like 17 and he was already, you know, best in the world status.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not like that, where you're just insane by the time you leave high school, good fucking luck to you. Which is which is not reality actually for a lot of people. A lot of people, you know, they will get good at music at different points in their lives. Like the idea that it only can happen in your teenage years is it's just this crazy myth.
Right.
And so, but a lot of people believe it. And so they could be 25 or 30 or 35 and think that, all right, it's too late.
Yeah. Dude, I got my first record deal at 30.
There you go.
So yeah, I mean, like I was very late to the game in all regards for a lot of people. So,
I mean, but you weren't. That's the thing. It's a myth. Like, you definitely, because you're still going. So obviously you didn't miss the boat or anything. So, that I know several people who didn't even start, like mixing or whatever till they were like 35 or something, and then went on to become hugely successful with it. I mean, that's definitely less common, but it happens. I really think it comes down to when people do decide to do it, how committed are they to actually getting better?
Yeah, 100%. It's that focus, being able to kind of like zero in.
Yeah,
on the task.
I guess that gets old. Gets more difficult as you get older. People say, but I feel like also as you get older, you know how to learn better. So you should be able to get more done in less time when you're older because you're less of an idiot. Basically.
True. I guess it's like you learn better. I would say your responsibilities are generally higher. So, but yeah.
You are less of an idiot though. So
definitely.
Yeah, like because you've already learned some things.
Right.
So you should know how to learn by the time you're in your 30s, hopefully. So
hopefully.
So I was listening to the new single. First of all, it's fucking sick. And it's called Iridescent for people who are wondering what I'm talking about, because, you know, who knows if they're listening to this 5 years from now. But I went back and I kind of listened to your full catalog because I wanted to notice the style changes that we talked about through the years. And so I did notice them, that there's a lot of stuff that happens even from song to song. It's like there's new things, but there's some common threads still throughout.
Yeah.
Like there's like this, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but there's this like Rust in Peace almost kind of style of riffing.
Yeah.
This like chromatic kind of Rust in Peace-ish kind of thing that I feel like anchors a lot of it. And so that's kind of where I kind of like spotted it, like that song, like Take No Prisoners.
Yeah.
Take No Prisoners, Take No Shit. Like that song. I don't know. This is just me like guessing, but there's this element of that type of chromatic riff that I hear throughout your catalog, regardless of if like this song is prog or this one's more black metal or this one's like tech death or whatever. Like I keep hearing it go back to that, and it not like a Megadeth rip, just like it's like it's like the closest thing I can relate it to is that chromatic-y kind of Megadeth thing.
I mean, you hit it right on the head. Like that's like one of the biggest influences, in the band would be Megadeth for sure. Yeah, it's so funny that you said that because I'm like, oh yeah, totally in that vein, for sure. That kind of like, I don't know, that like very notey thrash-esque.
Not the gallopy thrash. It's like it's just like this Megadeth-y kind of notey, chromatic-y, single note kind of thing.
Yeah.
That it's really cool. But I was noticing that, regardless of, like, I don't know which songs I was hearing that had which members or whatever, but it was still sounded like the same band to me.
That's good. I mean, I think that when we had the vocalist change, I think a lot of he had a different vision for the band.
Mm-hmm.
And, the last full length we did, I think it kind of leaned more into that style, and which was, a good album. Like, I liked the album a lot, but it was very different from how we started, where then, like, now that he's left, we were able, like, I feel like the music is kind of weaving back to a little bit of how, like, the band was envisioned in the kind of in the early days. But then with our new album, it's a really good marriage of both the old and the new. That's actually very impressed with us to kind of like take these, because to put them side by side, it works at a live show, but like if I released the first album and the last album, I just like didn't know how they would work, so to speak. Or I feel like the new album that comes out next year will really, it kind of like really cements that. And it was kind of like, it felt really good to kind of have like this overarching sound from the whole career, as it were.
It's kind of like owning your entire sound, like you're owning your entire catalog.
Yeah. So
it's interesting, man, because like back to just circling back, when fans say it doesn't sound like the band anymore about lineup changes, or I liked them better before they did X, like with Opeth or something, they'll say before they went classic rock or something.
Right.
But I guarantee you, if they put out a death metal album now that included some of their classic rock, it would sound just like they've always sounded.
Just like they've always...
But with all the things that they do. And it would be just as sick as anything else. So I feel like what you're saying now is like really, really great. It's basically stamping, like planting a flag for your entire catalog.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of weird when we were talking about like, learning to say no and like making good business decisions. That's one thing that Allegiant's always been really horrible at, and we're trying to learn, where a lot of times we would always lead with our artistic sense and not necessarily with a good business sense. Like when it was like, oh, let's record a Bach concerto, like a movement of a Bach concerto. Not like for a band that's supposed to be like death metal, not the best choice, but that was like something that I always wanted to do. So, we needed a track, so we did it. And then have that be a single, which did, relatively well for us. But I think throwing these things at the fans sometimes, I think, throws them for loops, But I hope they realize, like, we're just musicians that like to play.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, but there's plenty of bands that have had long careers that do weird, unexpected shit.
Yeah.
I'm not even a Tool fan, but like Tool is a great example of a band who always did weird shit and ended up getting huge. But like if you look at bands like Mr. Bungle, or Faith No More, or Opeth, or even System of a Down. Again, I'm not a huge fan, but like band got enormous doing weird shit. I just think, why not just do weird shit? There's enough examples out there of bands just doing whatever the fuck they want and it working.
Yeah. But I think there was some consistency in some of those bands' weird shit.
Yeah,
you just
maybe so.
You expected them to do weird shit. Like Mr. Bungle, their whole foundation was weird shit.
Yeah, but their foundation was weird shit, but they went so far with it that people, I think, expected a certain type of weird shit, and then they would change it even further, and that threw people for a loop. Yet they still ended up loving them.
Yeah.
Though, no, I'm just thinking back to like how radically different every one of their albums are, and how people would love an album and then expect another version of that same album to come out.
Right.
And then suddenly it's like surf music.
That's right. And they did that like big band death metal thing on California. That was awesome.
Yeah. But that's not what fans wanted. I think they wanted either the circus stuff,
right,
or they wanted the pseudo death metal avant-garde stuff. But they were not expecting a big band surf death metal thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I understand what you're saying, but I also think fuck it. fuck it. Just do what you want.
just do what you want.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's honesty. You know, there's honest in there.
Yeah. I mean, really, if you're talking about the stress to worth it ratio, with the amount of money that there is in this, may as well just say fuck it and do what you want.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good way to think about it.
And
it's absolutely true, right?
Yeah. So why not? It's not. I understand if there's millions of dollars on the line. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, if you're in Five Finger Death Punch, I think probably the things that you have to consider. Yeah. Just do what you do. just do what you got to do. Keep that fucking train rolling.
Hire Andy James and then write the same stuff. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. Just whatever you do, it's not for me, but it doesn't matter. Just do it. But it's so I think it's a good place to end the podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time to chill and finally do this. It's been a pleasure.
Hell yeah, man. Thank you for having me.
Anytime, dude. Anytime.